I'm Carrie Christensen, and I'm with Peace Education Program. We're going to be doing a lesson about anger thermometers, which is a great lesson about emotions and how they affect conflict and conflict resolution. So we're going to start by thinking about something called an anger trigger. A trigger is something that sets something off. So if you think about an anger trigger, it is something that happens that sets off a feeling of anger or frustration in you. So I want you to think for a second. If you are having a fabulous day, everything's great, and somebody does something, and all of a sudden you're annoyed, you're frustrated, you're upset, that's called an anger trigger. So I want you to think, what are some of your anger triggers? What are some things that you notice make you feel upset when somebody else does them?
One of my anger triggers is when my sister is annoying me, especially when she's singing songs that I don't like.
One of my anger triggers is when somebody don't listen to me.
One of my anger triggers is when somebody's messing with me and like not giving me any personal space. And Joe, what are you doing? Get out of my personal space, please, Joe.
So while you're thinking about what some of yours are, I'm going to be writing a list of some common anger triggers. So if I put one up here that you've had before, that trigger sounds familiar to you, you know it's something that makes you feel mad, what I would love for you to do is give me a two-handed wave. You're going to say, oh yeah, I feel that one, right? Just let me know if you have this trigger too. Because some of these are universal, meaning they affect everybody. So one anger trigger that a lot of people have is when someone is not listening to you. So if you're not being listened to or you're being ignored, that can really set somebody off. Let me see who out there doesn't like it when people don't listen to them. Yeah, makes sense. Another one is name calling. Most of us hate it when someone insults us or calls us out of our name, right? We want to be called what our name is. So think about that. Has anybody ever called you a name that you didn't like or insulted you in some way and it made you mad? A lot of people really don't like it when people touch their stuff. So you've got your own things, you've got your own stuff, you've got it how you like, and people mess with it. How many people have that trigger? Excellent. I'm just going to do a couple more here. Another one, this is one of my biggest triggers, is when people lie to me. Who else hates it when someone lies to you about something, especially something important? So I'm going to do one more here. Another trigger that a lot of people have is when somebody talks about your family. Who's ever had that happen where someone said something disrespectful about someone in your family? That can be a big one. Definitely universal. So we could list and list and list and list. There are hundreds of anger triggers, and everybody's are a little bit different. But now we've got these anger triggers, we're ready to talk about what these anger triggers do to our body. So what I've done up here is I've drawn a thermometer. And you've probably used a thermometer before. Especially now, right? Everybody's taking our temperature. We're taking our temperature all the time. And on a regular thermometer, there's numbers, right? It says 90, 91, 92, 93, right? It goes up with numbers. Well, this is not a regular thermometer. We're going to be using this to measure anger. There's so many great words that describe being angry. And I'm going to start right in the very middle with mad. So mad is a great word to describe that feeling when somebody is bothering you. But there's lots of words that describe being almost mad, kind of mad, a little bit mad, just a tiny bit mad, right? So what are some of those words? Think about some of the words you use to describe being mad.
Some of the other words for being angry is being mad, very energetic, in a bad way.
Some other words for being angry. Here are just a few examples. Mad, furious, mutinous, cheesed off.
One I really like is to say frustrated. So a lot of times right before mad, frustrated is the feeling that we have. Before that, we can feel annoyed. We might be upset. Sometimes we're stressed. So there's all sorts of words that describe being mad. And it's important to know that there's a scale, because every anger trigger doesn't necessarily make us mad. Some of them just upset us. Some of them just stress us out. Sometimes they're just frustrating. But I bet you can think of anger triggers that make you more than mad, that put you above that part of the scale. And so let's put a couple good words there. Let's say that you might feel angry. You might feel furious. You might even go all the way up to the top. My favorite word to describe being angry, enraged. And enraged is a word that means you are so mad you can't even think straight anymore, right? That thermometer at the top is blown right off of it. A lot of people talk about being enraged as you're not even in control of what you're doing anymore. It's a pretty scary feeling. So when you look at that, think about if there's any words I missed, and what words you might add to your thermometer, right, that you use to describe being mad. And then what I want us to do is I want us to talk about the anger trigger, what it has to do with this thermometer. When the trigger happens, we go someplace on this thermometer, but our body responds with something really important. Our body lets us know what's going on with an anger cue. So you'll notice this isn't the letter Q, right? It's the word cue. And what a cue is a signal or a sign. And so here's what I need you to think about. If somebody makes you mad, what does your body do to warn you that you're feeling that way? When you feel mad, how would you describe the feeling to somebody? Where in your body do you feel it? And what does it feel like? So I'm going to put a few anger cues up here that are pretty normal, right? That lots of people experience. One of them, we make a fist, right? So a lot of times somebody says something to us that doesn't sound right. We're feeling a little disrespected, and our hands ball up, right, into a fist. That's one anger cue. So if you have that anger cue, give me a little wave, right? Yeah, you feel that one? That's a really common one. Here's another one. Sometimes we get hot, like we literally heat up. So the anger trigger happens, and some of us feel heat rising in our neck or across our cheeks, right? Some of us, the complexion even changes. We might turn red. This getting hot also does one of mine. My palms get sweaty. You might get sweaty in lots of places. I get sweaty on my palms. So who else gets sweaty when you get mad? Another thing that happens, some people actually get a headache or a stomach ache or a sore throat. You feel it someplace in your body. It's a warning, right? Uh-oh, something's not normal. Another really common one is that our breathing gets funny. So some of us start to breathe real shallowly like this. Others of us actually hold our breath, right? Our breathing gets really strange. Now this one's related to the next cue we're going to talk about. Your breathing changes, right? The oxygen to your brain, right? You're not getting as much oxygen. And one of the things that happens is your brain stops working as clearly. So one of the things that happens to a lot of people is you forget what you're saying. You lose your train of thought, right? For me, you know what I forget? I forget people's names, and I especially forget the person's name who I'm mad at, right? I call them by the wrong name. So a lot of times our brain is kind of warning us because it gets muddled. Things get confused. So there are lots of other anger cues. I want you to think about what some of yours might be that I'm missing from here.
One of my anger cues is my ears will get real hot and probably turn red, and I'll get kind of sweaty.
My anger cue is I just stare at them.
One of my anger cues is I tear up, and it's really embarrassing because you don't want to tear up when you're trying to be assertive or you're in an argument, but that's definitely one of my cues.
So let's go back to our thermometer and see how these two things relate. So when the trigger happens and someone makes you feel mad, then your body responds with a cue. Now, if you're really good at noticing your cues, you're going to notice right down here when it starts to happen. I know for me, my palms get sweaty very first thing. So when someone first stresses me out, those palms get sweaty. Now, if I'm really good at knowing, oop, the trigger happened, my palms are sweaty, ooh, I need to figure out how to calm down right now, it's pretty easy. Because there's all this crazy stuff that happens if we let this get higher and higher and higher. And one of the things we say all the time at PSED is that you've got to be careful because when your emotions are high, your thinking is low. So everybody just think about that for a second. When your emotions are high, your thinking is low. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. And what I want you to do is go ahead and just raise your hands up. So if this happened to you, just let me know. If it's never happened, you can cross your arms, shake your head. If it's happened to you a whole bunch, give me 2 hands up, okay? And so here's a question for you. How many of you out there have ever been so mad that you said something to someone that you wish you'd never said out loud? I'm putting 2 hands up for that one myself. A lot of times that filter to our brain goes away, right? That's one of those other anger cues. So what about this one? Anybody out there ever been so mad, probably up here somewhere, that you actually hurt someone else? You shoved them or pushed them or kicked them or had a fight with them, right? Who's ever been that angry? What about this? Anybody ever been so mad that you hurt yourself? Throwing a fit, kicking the wall, throwing things. Sometimes we get so out of control up here that we even do things that harm ourselves. Break something that's important to yourself. Anybody ever broken something when you were mad throwing a fit? So what's important here to know is that as this thermometer goes up, when our emotions are high, that thinking is low, we actually make worse and worse choices. And a more blunt way to put that is the angrier we get, the dumber we get. Even if we're super smart, right? I teach this stuff. I teach conflict resolution. And if someone cuts me off in traffic, sometimes I do something really dumb because my thinking is low. So this is really, this warning sign, these anger cues are there to help you. They're there to make sure that when a trigger happens, you can keep things under control. Okay, so now that we know how this anger thermometer operates and that anger triggers create a response in our body called an anger cue, and we know that when our emotions are high, our thinking is low, it is crucial that we figure out some ways to keep this thermometer down low. We can't avoid anger triggers. They're gonna happen. And so what we can have some control over is how we regulate our emotions when a trigger occurs. So let's come up with some strategies for calming down. So think about it. What helps you when a trigger happens or someone is trying to get on your nerves? What are some of your strategies that actually make you feel calmer, feel better, that help you figure out a good choice about what to do?
One of my strategies for calming down is putting my head under a pillow for 2 minutes.
One of my best strategies is taking my time to think about what I did and let it all go and move on.
One of my best strategies for calming down is having a snack.
So one of the strategies for calming down that is, I think, really, really key is to breathe. When you breathe, you're getting oxygen back to your brain. You're giving yourself a second to connect that amygdala to your prefrontal cortex. You're making sure that the breath is grounding you, right? Now, there's lots of different ways to breathe. I'm sure you know lots of tricks. I'm going to show you one of my favorites. Some people talk about belly breaths, right? And they do that because they want the breath to go in through your nose all the way down to your belly. That's a true deep breath. You also need to make sure it's not big and exaggerated. So I'm going to do a deep breath that's not very good. That's not helping me. That is still my brain's getting charged, everything's happening, I'm not calming. If you do a belly breath that only you can hear, like this, that feels very different, okay? So give that one a try. Now there's a few ways, one breath usually doesn't do it. Roller coaster breathing is great, right? So here's your roller coaster, you're gonna put it at the base of your thumb. And whenever you go up the hill, you're gonna breathe in. Whenever you go down the hill, you're gonna breathe out. Okay, so go ahead and do that with me. Excellent. So that's the roller coaster. Some people call it hand breathing. You can do it on both hands if you need it. So let me do one more for you. We have breathing up here. Super, super important. And one of the things that helps with breathing is that you also need to make sure that you are relaxing your muscles. Do you remember how we talked about sometimes our fists ball up or we get headaches, right? Everything gets real tense when we're mad. And so to relax everything really helps. So I'm going to show you a trick called faucet, right? So put your hands out in front of you, put your pinkies together. And this is going to be like a faucet you might see in the bathtub or in the kitchen. But we're going to turn that faucet on by first turning our hands into a faucet. So we're going to roll our pinkies up and then our next fingers. We're kind of going in slow motion until we get a fist. And once we get that fist, we're going to send that tension all the way up our arms. Then we're going to send it to our shoulders. We're going to send it all the way into our face. We're going to scrunch up as tight as we can. And then we're going to turn that faucet. We're going to let it all go. I like to do that one 2 or 3 times, right? Until all the tension leaves. So let's think of some other ones. So other ways to calm down when you're feeling mad. I know one for me is to listen to music. Music can really calm us down, take our mind off of it. Some people like to write or draw or read. Exercise helps. Taking a walk. If you can't take a walk, even dancing or having some jumping jacks, anything to get your heart moving in a way that uses up some of that adrenaline. Lots of these are important. And in fact, the more you have, the better off you're going to be. So see if you can figure out some more to fill in my strategies wheel. Ways to calm down when an anger trigger happens.